I think he's hilarious. But no, I mean, they have to keep their body within a certain weight.
Yeah.
They can't be too light or too heavy, and they actually weigh them after the races. But
yeah, and just he was talking about just having all that core strength, right? Because I mean, think about how many G's they're pulling.
Yeah,
when they're going into, like he was saying, like the race car is it's like on rails, right? There's so much grip and it's turning, like you're experiencing so many G's. So just thinking about keeping your core and your body straight, right, as you're sort of going through those turns is mind-boggling.
Yeah, that was F1. But Samir, you want to kind of lead the way here?
Transition
into round 2. Thank you so much, Mr. Davé, for rejoining us.
Yeah, it's so nice that you got to come back and, we can have some more fun together, talk a little bit.
Yeah, my Friday was crazy. I had like back-to-backs and I, only had that time because I had a meeting at 4. So, I mean, there's some other areas that maybe we could do like deeper dives into. So,
let's do it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, I mean, I remember that you talked on so much like how literally your whole life is about transcending reality. So, I mean, when we were talking towards the end, you said that you had a lot of things that you wanted to come back and talk about. So where do you feel would be a good place that you want to, just resume the conversation with us?
Yeah, one of the points I wanted to make, and Andrew, you had asked this question about how do you keep up? The tech is moving at such a rapid pace, right? How do you keep up? And one of the things I said was like, I'm plugged into a lot of sort of the Twitter community and some of the other like social networks, and I'm reading a lot, but I'm also doing projects, right? So you actually have to build something and get your hands, sort of like roll up your sleeves and still be involved. And what I have, and just to go back, I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so I love doing projects with them. So we just did something which is much like a 3D printed Tesla, right? So there's this project called OpenBot. It's actually, if you go to openbot.org, you can check it out. And it was actually started up by a bunch of researchers from Intel who are creating sort of this self-driving 3D printed car, right? So they have all the schematics of the internal electronics. They have the layout of how you can 3D print the body of the car. And it runs on a commodity Android phone, right? And they have a neural network that they built out, and you train this car that you build, let's say around your living room or kitchen.
Sure.
And so it could follow you, it could drive around and avoid obstacles. You have the camera from the phone, and you also have these 2 ultrasonic sensors for depth, for gauging how far distances are, right? And so if you sort of extrapolate that project and you think about what a Tesla is doing, it's basically the same thing, right? So Tesla has something called autopilot, right? And it has 8 or 9 cameras, and then it has ultrasonic sensors around the car, right? And what it's doing a couple of things. It's got computer vision, right? So it's doing object detection. So as you're driving, or as the car is driving, it's noticing pedestrians, it's noticing other cars, it's noticing curbs, it's noticing lane markings, right? And then it's also noticing signs, right? And then that's great, it notices that. But what computer vision does, and this is where we're going into like more of the theory, right? One aspect is, yes, a computer can notice and observe the world, right? But it doesn't know what it is, right? So it may see people and it may see a dog. Okay, it can put bounding boxes, meaning it recognizes that these objects are there.
Right.
But it has no idea what a dog is, or what a human is, or what another car is, right? And so this is now where neural networks and machine learning comes into play. So people are like, oh, what is all this stuff, right? Put it simply, all you're doing is you're training this machine learning model. And let's take a simple example of a dog. There's hundreds of types of dogs. But let's say you want to, you have a camera and you want to identify a chihuahua.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you are basically feeding this neural network thousands of images of a chihuahua, right? And so on the first pass, yeah, it's not going to know what a chihuahua is, but then
Right.
it starts to and it's a lot of math actually, because a neural network is basically a mathematical representation of anything, of an object or something, right? And so if you are feeding it thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of pictures, it starts to recognize and it starts to understand the characteristics of a chihuahua, right? And then it will start to know, okay, this is a chihuahua, this is a banana, this is a chihuahua, this is a doberman. It's a dog, but it's not a chihuahua, right?
Right.
And so that's how basically computers are learning. When they say machine learning, when they say like neural networks, right? It's basically giving itself a confidence score or a confidence rating.
Okay.
And actually, you do have humans involved, right? They are saying, yes, they're labeling things. So they're saying these 4 items are chihuahuas and these 5 are not, right? So in that way, the computer is starting to understand what a chihuahua is. So if you look at the sensors and sort of the internal mechanisms of Tesla's autopilot system, it's basically doing the same thing. And then all it has to do is, right, it's all inputs and outputs. Once it starts understanding what's on the road, and I'm really simplifying it, but then you could potentially teach a computer how to drive a car, because all you have are your acceleration inputs, your brake inputs, and your steering inputs, right? And as the computer starts to understand how to drive, right, all it's doing is it's a combination of exploiting those inputs, right? So if it sees a stop sign, it knows that, okay, I have to ease off of the accelerator,
Right.
and I have to start applying the brake, or it's an electric car, so it has regen braking, right? So I have to just let go of the accelerator, and it knows the distance, right? How many feet per second, it needs to slow down gracefully, right? And it can't go to an abrupt stop, because human passengers are gonna not enjoy that, right? So it's a lot of math and calculating that it's doing, but really that's all it is, right? It seems kind of crazy and it seems very difficult, but if you think about it, there's now more than 1 million Teslas on the road, and they're all running. Even if you don't have autopilot on, they're running in what's called shadow mode, right? So as I'm driving, the car is actually running its own neural network or machine learning on the side, thinking, okay, the driver is doing this. If I was driving, would I also be doing the same thing? So there's this other component that's actually running the same time that you're driving.
Wow.
But it's not, so if you have autopilot off, it's still working like autopilot would be on, and then it's comparing the differences. So that's how it's learning about how humans drive as well. I mean, it's actually kind of brilliant the way Tesla's doing it.
And I heard that Tesla you update your car when you have a Tesla.
Oh, yes.
You'll find out when, like, it's like a phone update, like you have to
Yes.
update it. And I was watching an interview with Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, and he was talking about how they process, like you were saying, information from all the cars with drivers driving them, and that goes into the update. So you're having millions of drivers and driving and hours of driving experience that are being funneled into this one update. So each update is actually the information that the car is taking from thousands of hours of driving experience.
Correct. You are absolutely right. And so there's something called OTA, or over-the-air updates, right? So your Tesla is actually improving in time because the car it's built off of software, right? And so if it needs to update, it's just like your phone, like you said. You get an update and you get a notification on your phone that, hey, there's an update, and the car installs the update. But there's also this notion of software 2.0, right? So like, what is software 2.0? So what software 1.0 is humans writing software and programming, right? What software 2.0 is machines and computers writing software. And so it's learning, and then it's generating some code or an action that doesn't require a human to be present, right? And so we're always thinking, oh, AI is going to take over these industries. I'm like, yeah, AI is also impacting the developers as well, where because now you can have machines write software based on data and based on neural networks, right? Which was not a thing because those things were compute intensive. And so that's the other thing. Now you have the power of the cloud, right? So 20, 30, 50 years ago, you had to build individual specialized infrastructure to do what you wanted to do. So let's say you wanted to build your own website, right? You had to go out, you had to procure, meaning buy physical hardware, stick it in a room, make sure you have enough cooling, you have enough power, right? And then you have to secure that infrastructure, you have to install the software on it, you have to gauge the requirements of, okay, how many people I think are going to be using this, and then you have to make sure you have enough resources on that box to meet the demands, right? Now you can simply go to AWS, like Amazon Web Services, which is a cloud provider, or like GCP, which is Google's cloud platform, and say, okay, I want to build a website, and I think the first month I'll get 50,000 hits, right? And then so boom, a couple of clicks later, you have your infrastructure, you can start building on it, and then your website is live, like all in the matter of a couple of clicks.
Wow.
Right. And then you can scale that on the fly. So let's say you've done a great job of spreading the word about your website or about your podcast or whatever you're building.
Right.
And then instead of 50,000 hits, you're starting to see 100,000 hits. Well, this thing will scale on the fly, right? So now you need more processing power or more compute power. You need a bigger hard drive, right? You need a load balance, like you need a load balancer to balance all that load. All of that can be done on the fly without having to rebuild or take down and buy another physical machine.
And this was one of the issues you had run into when you were at Rutgers redesigning the website, right?
Exactly. So that application, that online contract application had crashed because we didn't gauge the amounts of traffic, right? We thought we were getting X number of traffic, but really the traffic was overbearing. And then we had to literally order the equipment, right? And that takes time. And then you have to build it, you have to configure it, you have to integrate it with your current environment or server that you have, and then you have to launch it, right? And so, but now all of this is, you can do it in a matter of seconds.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to ask, because I'm interested in the whole idea of like a self-driving car. Have you driven one of those cars, and like, would you trust them now to self-drive?
For the record, I have a Tesla.
Okay. All right.
And I'm also an investor in Tesla. So
something we share then.
Yeah, take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I so whenever I'm driving, it's on autopilot. I trust it more than sometimes my own driving, right? Because if you think about it, it never gets tired. It has a 360-degree view. So think about you driving, and you have freaking ultrasonics busting out of your back, and you have a camera around you, right? We don't have that. So yeah, if I were to actually go back and quantify the amount of miles I have driven versus autopilot since I got that car, I want to say 90% of my driving has been on autopilot.
Wow.
I trust it.
So
completely.
when you're going to work in the morning, right? You just hop in there. Do you like touch it at all or anything, or does it just do its thing?
So like, what's happening right now? If you don't touch it, it will nag you. So you have to keep like one hand on the steering wheel, right? And you have to be paying attention.
Sure.
Right now, it doesn't take turns. So if I had to make a left turn or a right turn or take an exit that's not on the highway, I would take over, right? And I would take that turn. Right now, a couple of early beta testers are testing the full self-driving beta, and that thing does everything. You basically say, "Take me to the mall," and it will come out of your driveway. It will go on whatever street or take whatever turns or whatever exits, and it will take you to the mall.
Wow.
Interesting. And the
No intervention.
and
Like you still have to keep your hand on the wheel,
right.
but you just simply put in the your destination and it does everything else.
Wow. And the unique thing is they're pretty affordable considering the amount of technology in their cars.
Yeah.
So, I know right now one of the big issues that prevents people from buying a Tesla or a car similar to that is the idea that they don't have a charging station in their house. And I'm starting to see them more at gas stations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But how soon do you think, realistically, can we expect to start seeing charging stations built into, all gas stations in houses? Because that does play a big piece in the affordability of the car.
You're absolutely right, right? So one of the main things is, okay, if I get a EV, where am I going to charge it, right? Do I
Right.
have enough range to get me to my destination? So Tesla has its own supercharging network, and it's huge. I mean, they've got superchargers everywhere. Uh, the other and so here I'm putting on my investor hat, right? Why am I investing in Tesla? Well, Elon Musk was brilliant, and he said people are going to need to charge on the road. I'm also going to build out a supercharger network. So there's a charging uh, destination or a charging network there when you're traveling, and they've done a great job of putting it near like Panera Breads or Costco's or the mall, right, where like people are going to stop.
Right.
And Teslas have great range, right? And so in 2012, when they released the Model S, which was like their first sedan, they had done this like Roadster in 2008, but in 2012 they released the Model S, and it had over 300 miles of range. Um, since 2020 of last year, no other car EV has come close to that 2012 Model S range. Think about that. Think about, because they completely built that Model S from the ground up, right, around electrification and around something called BMS, or battery management software, right? People say, oh, but Tesla's just getting their cells, their batteries from Panasonic, right, or LG. Yeah, but there's software that they're writing so that those cells are more efficient, right? Like
Right.
that whole BMS is a complete Tesla proprietary software that they've written.
Wow.
Right? So like that's where people think, oh, can't GM just buy the same battery cells? And it's like, yeah, they can, but when it comes to software, like that's where the engineering, and that's where Tesla is just completely killing and crushing it in that space, right? Because they've just completely rethought what a car should be,
Right.
not just what an electric car should be.
It's fascinating.
Incredible. Yeah. So I mean, that whole philosophy of Elon Musk, that he's always improving something, always planning ahead, 10 years down the line, and then improving for that, not just for 2 weeks down the road.
Right. Yeah.
It's
long-term thinking, right?
Yeah.
It's really having, like he even says this, right? Like I'm not an investor, entrepreneur. I'm an engineer first, right? Like he's got such a technical capability. And if you watch some, who Lex Friedman is?
Yeah, he's on Joe Rogan every once in a while.
Yeah, like he does amazing stuff, and like he's got a lot of smart people that have worked at Tesla or worked for Elon, and just the amount of technical knowledge that Elon has, and it can be about crazy thing. Like he does a lot of context switching. So like he's also co-founded SpaceX, or founded SpaceX, right?
Right.
So he can not only get a broad knowledge of technical aspects, but he can take a specialized component of a rocket and go deep in that tech, right? And like that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Where like
yeah.
I think like I have a good foundation. I have a broad foundation of like technology and computers, but like he's got a broad and specialized knowledge of so much more, and like it's amazing, right? And so you can see that in the products that he's building, right? So like if you ever get a chance, I would say go test drive a Tesla.
Okay.
Like what it like it's completely redefines what a car should be, right? Like so we have a Tesla Model X, right? And so I walk up to it and the door automatically opens, right? I sit down and I press the brake and the door automatically shuts. And then I just put it into drive and go. There's no power button. Like, yeah, it's like why do you need a power button if your car is electric? It knows when it knows your key fob is in your pocket or your phone is near you, right? It will open the door. The Model X opens the door for you. If you do the Model 3 and Y, it just unlocks it because but you still have to open the door yourself.
Yeah.
But it knows you're near, right? And then you just go. So everything is also connected with the app as well, right? So you can heat your car in the morning, right? Like all from the app. You could what else can you do from that app? You can see where like the charging locations are, right? You can schedule your battery to be fully charged by 9 a.m., right? Or before you go to work, right? Like all of that is integrated. When you get a software update, the app tells you and installs it for you, right? I mean, it's they completely rethought of what a car should be. And then the acceleration, you get in and you push down on that acceleration.
I've heard.
And that thing goes. Like I've given people whiplash in this Tesla, and it's a 6-seater SUV, right? And it's beating out like Porsches or any sports car. So I mean, that acceleration is amazing. Right?
And I've heard it's also it is the safest car on the road.
Yes,
because there's no engine in the front, right?
Yes.
Which gives more.
Yeah, we have a frunk.
Yeah.
Frunk, yeah. And like the batteries on the bottom, right?
Yep.
That line it through.
Yep.
It's fascinating. How long does it take to charge it?
So it depends. At a supercharger, if you are at let's say 5%, you can get to 80% in like 30 minutes.
And what's the equivalent of miles? What does 80% mean in miles?
That gives you well over 200 miles.
Okay.
Right? And so if you're going on road trips, there's actually a strategy of charging, right? You want to charge enough to get to your next supercharger. So let's say you're taking an 8-hour road trip, right? You're gonna have to stop and get food, take a bathroom break, or whatever. So that's why the supercharger network stations are set up in places where that's available. But let's say you may only need to charge for 15 minutes to get you to the next supercharger destination. And there's an onboard like computer that calculates all that out for you. So on road trips, like, let's say we're going to Montreal, like we have to stop more than what the car needs because we have 2 little kids that get cranky and want to stop like every 2 hours, right? And so I may stop for like 10 minutes while my kid's like taking a bathroom break or getting some food. Yeah. And the car's done already. It's like, and it has games on it, right? So like while I'm supercharging, I could watch Netflix, I could watch YouTube, I can play games on on the car, which is quite amazing. And like who else is gonna build in a fart mode? So what it is, it's like you could make seats like or make the audio think like it's farting in a particular seat, right? Only Elon.
Only Elon, with the
bullshit like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like no other CEO is gonna do that.
Yeah. I mean, well, his whole idea with the Boring Company came from Spaceballs. That was and the flamethrower and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, like
and the ludicrous mode, right? Like
hey,
they went plaid.
Yeah.
That's all from Spaceballs, right?
Right.
So like,
yeah.
That's a good thing because he has like some substance and he has character.
Exactly.
And you can completely tell from the products that he's building, right? It's not just like an empty suit CIO, right? That has like no personality at all.
Yeah.
And like his products, like they exhibit that, right?
Hmm.
And like it really shows.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, as somebody who's, interested in really helping revolutionize education in terms of, we talked about this on our last episode. Is it concerning, like we're talking about Tesla right now, at
Yeah.
any point does it become too, like, do you fear that people will become too lazy? Like, you look at technology and you see all that goes into it, and
Yeah.
you've spent your life in that, and you can
Yeah.
appreciate that. But as a consumer, I get a Tesla and I know really I just have to do less. Do you ever worry that we're just going to become too lazy?
Yeah, that crosses a lot of people's minds, right? But I also look back to history and think about, remember farmers and Luddites, right? When they were like, "Oh no, the machines are going to take over." Do you know the story about the farmers and the Luddites, right?
No,
So,
I do
You can
not.
share
oh,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
Samir, what did you say? Did you
No,
say
no, I was
something?
saying that. Yeah, please feel free to share that.
Okay, so what had happened was when they started introducing machines to farmers, they were actually taken back because they thought the machines would be replacing the farmers, right? And so these were really just at that point really simple machines, but farmers did a lot of the labor work, right? And so naturally, they were thinking that, oh my God, I'm going to be replaced, right? The machines are going to start doing the work. And there was a group called the Luddites who banded together, and like were they were destroying the machines, and they were really against this technology because their livelihoods and how they earn and make a living was they were fearful that it was going to be lost to the machines.
For
And
sure.
but
Yeah.
if you look at the flip side of that, think about that agriculture or the farming revolution that happened because of the machines, right? And
Yeah.
so it's this really, you have to play this delicate balance of like, okay, I can think of 100 good things about this tech. And yes, there's going to be ways where people think, oh, this is going to make people more lazier, or it's going to, the productivity of a society may get hampered because of this, right? But that's why we need smart people who aren't just technologists making these decisions and having a voice in this as well. And that's why I think if you know the underpinnings of the tech, right, you are making better informed decisions as well,
Right.
because you want, it's not just magic or a black box anymore. You understand
Sure.
how it's working, and you understand what it what it means for a society to go down a certain path. And we nowadays, like, you just can't think, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer and I don't have to worry about this, right? Like, technology is being so pervasive, and it's going to be such entrenched in it already is, right, in our lives, that we can't just think, oh, that's not my that's not my domain, right? I can't
Right.
really think
Yeah.
about it. But so to answer your question, Andrew, should we be thinking about it? Absolutely, we should be thinking about it, right? And there should be more people that have a voice, and that have a say of, okay, this is completely detrimental to the fabric of society. So it shouldn't just be people in one geographic location, Silicon Valley, making decisions, right?
Right.
Or it shouldn't just be one tech behemoth making
Yeah.
decisions. Like, that's where I think governments should be getting smarter about this as well. And right, and that comes from people educating themselves and getting smarter, and at least knowing foundational skills, foundational sort of ideas of how this is all working, because then you have a voice, then you can say, okay, this is a slippery slope. But if you
Yeah.
don't understand what's happening underneath, or what's happening in the black box, who are you going to trust,
Right.
right? It's just going to be like magic to you. So how do
Sure.
you decipher one technology is good, the other is bad, when you don't
Sure.
have that background yourself?
Hmm.
You can't just say, oh, I have an MBA, I'll make decisions. Yeah, it's not going to work like that,
Yeah.
What piece of advice would you give to people? I mean, we're young, who might not necessarily have a tech background, but how do you even go about beginning to educate yourself on the immense amount of tech out there so that it doesn't necessarily control your life or all of your decisions without you knowing it?
So what I would recommend is, you don't have to minor or major in computer science, but I would say take a computer science class, right? Just to understand what is involved in uh, writing an application and like deploying it to the world, right? Like, because that's what like you're doing in computer science, or if you're interested in the theory behind how computers work, right? Because everything is digital now.
Mm-hmm.
So this could actually even help you in your professional lives as well, right? Because let's say you have an idea, you're entrepreneurial and you have an idea. Okay, how are you going to get that idea off the ground? You need to build either a product or a service, right?
Right.
Your touch points are going to be some sort of tech that's going to help you, right? So let's say you and Samir start something, and let's say you want to hire developers or engineers or designers. If you have even just the foundation, you can speak their language. You
Right.
know who is BSing you, who is not BSing you. You know who is good and who is not. You know the limits of the technology as well that you're building,
Mm-hmm.
right? It just gives
Definitely,
you
yeah.
that confidence and know-how of, okay, here's what I want to do. You may not be able to do it alone, and you may need to hire some people. You may need to hire some freelancers, but at least you can make more sound judgments on your team that you're going to hire, the product you're going to build, the service you're going to offer, and how is it kick-ass and better than what's available right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, I guarantee, this day and age through technology, because that's the world we're living in, and that's where your consumers are. And I don't care if you want to open up a new hotel chain or you want to make toilets. Like, tech is going to be involved.
Right,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a great piece of advice.
It definitely is. And I mean, this talk of learning and growing between, Andrew, your question and everything that we've been talking about, Mr. Davé, has me thinking that what are the things that you do, whether it's a daily basis or like a weekly thing, that you do to learn and keep growing, whether it's in the tech field or in life in general?
Yeah. I carve out my day where I have, even if it's 30 minutes to an hour, to step away and learn something different. You have to, right? Like, Andrew, like, how do I keep up? And it just doesn't have to be about tech, right? And like, I also made the point of like, you want to be well-rounded.
Right.
So it could be, this is really flinging out there, but I still drive a car that I bought when I was 21. It's a
Wow.
I still have it. I have a Tesla. We have a Tesla, but it's a 2001 Mazda Protege 5. But I want to run this thing to the ground, and I was like, okay, I started learning how to do my own like brake work on it, how to change my oil, like, if something goes wrong, like I want to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
And so it's just having this learning based mindset, right? Where no matter what it is, I just I want to figure out how to fix it myself first before I'm like, holy shit, I need to call someone.
Right.
Or I can't do this. Or like, we bought a house and I want to learn, how to fix the HVAC system if something were to go wrong. Or at least if something does go wrong, I can at least communicate to the people that will come and fix it what is happening.
Right.
And so I always have this like learning mindset of, if I don't know it now, I'm going to learn about it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, it doesn't require, I mean, there's so much, we talked about this last time too, there's so much information out there and so many people who are willing to share what they know and what they learn as well, that you could learn anything. Like you don't have to like, oh, I have to get another degree or I have to get a certificate. Like, there's so much good learning opportunities where you have to. So I carve out my day where I either read about something or I learn about something, but I get away and I make sure that I'm like my ideas and my views are challenged and I'm learning.
That's seriously awesome. I mean, from even my own personal experience, and maybe Andrew from you as well, tools like Google, tools like even YouTube, You know, I mean, there's a dichotomy between, you know, going and watching PewDiePie, nothing wrong with him, by the way, or video games. But there's also that dichotomy of learning, of finding different perspectives and challenging our ideas, like Andrew, we talk about all the time.
Right.
So where would you start if you want to learn about the HVAC system or oiling your car?
So you know, I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that is a huge skill set. Like, how do you figure out what is misinformation, right? How do you figure out what is something that is obviously not true, right? And so I remember, I think my first or second semester, we had a class. It was like information retrieval or something, right? And so basically what we did is like we reverse engineers Google's page ranking system. And so, yeah, I'm going kind of deep into the tech, but it was, okay, how is Google doing semantic search, and how are they ranking what you're searching into, right? And there is like an algorithm, and there is a way that they're doing it. But what it also taught us was, how do you decipher what something is true and what something is not, right? Because you have to look at these things objectively. Just because you do a Google search or you read it on a blog post, okay, but there's a lot of, also there's a lot of FUD. We call it FUD: fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? So like you'll find, actually you'll find a lot of this stuff on products, right? So since we're on the Tesla thing, I'll talk about Tesla. There was this article that was written that, oh, a hacker could hack into a Tesla within 90 seconds. And I was like, what? And so there was this point where like this was being spread everywhere. And so I read all of the articles. I read a Wired article, and it actually broke down what was needed to do this hack. And it was a researcher who like figured this out. And so he had bought one of the Tesla boards on eBay, right? And then he had to solder the board to this MCU, which is the media control unit. So I'm like, right there, that takes the population from, oh, a simple hack to really specialized people that understand bytecode, like assembly language, right? He had to buy another Model X and put it close so he could connect to the network. It was so
that
ridiculous.
Eliminates a lot of people right there.
Right? It was so ridiculous. I'm like, this hack. And Tesla, the next day, pushed out an over-the-air update, and so it was nowhere. You can't even do the hack. But not only, like every other news report I read, it was like, oh, easy 90-second Tesla hack that could unlock and your car. But when you actually looked into what was required to do this hack, it was literally next to impossible. But it's technically possible. Right? It's technically possible, but for the average person, they would have no idea how to do this hack. No idea.
Yeah.
It would be easier to just jack a normal car and wire that one.
And you're absolutely right. And what the Wired article was actually honest. They said there was a code in the key fob that was allowing like this hacked board to connect when you program that board, right? But they were saying that, you know, this could also happen in another car as well. It wasn't just Tesla, but Tesla got put through the ringer because Tesla is the new hot, you know, company.
Like the black sheep.
Yeah. It's like they were the black sheep of the day, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
But like like Forbes had an article on it, but actually when you look at the hack and you think about like who could actually do this, you have a really specialized subset of the population that could do this, and they could probably even afford the Tesla, right? So like it was like so that's what FUD is. It's like they're like, and I'm not saying everything could be FUD, right? There's a lot of things where, like you should watch out and not trust everything that's on the internet as well. But so you need to have this mindset of like, okay, what is real? What is misinformation? What is just propaganda, right? And that is a learning process, and that takes a lot of critical thinking as well.
For sure. for sure. I mean, that goes to show, like, just last month in January, the beginning, when everything was happening in Washington, all the craziness, and there were a lot of people criticizing the social media groups and everything that controls information, that, hey, this is like censorship. But beside the politics,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how much control companies like Twitter, Google, and even like CNN, those sorts of media outlets have on taking what's actually happening and giving it to us, and how there is like a gap between the biases, the different perspectives, and then the truth.
Yeah, that's why I actually like being on. Like, I wasn't a big Twitter user, but I actually like being on Twitter because I follow a lot of different people that have different voices, right? And so it allows you to get different perspectives on the world, right? So I mean, and if you think about it, right, before social media, where were most of the people getting their information? Right, from TV, right, from those large networks, right? They were getting their information, but now you have access to so much more, not only different sources, but different types of information from different people. And so once again, it's also could be a lot of information overload, because how do you decipher what is the truth versus what is spin or what is biased, or what's the agenda from this person tweeting about this, right? And so I think about all of that, right? When I'm reading something, okay, like, what is the agenda? Like, who's the author, right? Does he have an ulterior motive, right? Right. And then I use sort of I put my technical hat on, and I think, okay, what is like the ground truth of this?
Sure. Awesome.
That's really fascinating, how you employ that sort of a mindset.
I wanted to ask you, because we talk a lot about leadership between Samir and myself, but what is your leadership style in terms of how are you interacting with the teams of people you're working with, and what are just a couple virtues off the top of your head? We're kind of putting you on the spot here, but that you think all great leaders possess.
All great leaders possess how to empower their teams, right? For maximum efficiency, productivity, and critical thinking. So all groups of people or corporations are, right, are groups of people inside those businesses or organizations, right? And so what leaders do, and the number one thing, are remove roadblocks that are there. And it may be bureaucratic roadblocks, and maybe political roadblocks, and maybe technical roadblocks, but as a leader, you have to identify what your goal is that the team needs to get to or accomplish. And then as a leader, what are the hurdles, the roadblocks that are there? And then how do you empower that team to get through the other side?
It's awesome.
Right. And you want to make sure, like, I am not a micromanager, right? I'm not the type of person that says, okay, you need to do ABC, XYZ today. You need to do blah, 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 right? So you set goals along the way, and then you have these check-ins where you're like, okay, how are we doing, right? Where are we at? What are some of the roadblocks? How do we need to improve? What do we need to do? And you have this feedback loop that you constantly run. And so there's something called like Scrum. It's the way to. Are you familiar with that? Scrum?
No.
Anyone?
Scrum,
Okay.
no.
So I'll take it from my world, where let's say we're pushing out a product, or we're developing something, right? And so Scrum is basically like a project management technique that you could use. So, like, let's say every 2 weeks, the team needs to push out XYZ features of a product, right? And so you break it down to, okay, here's what the design team needs to be doing. Here's what the marketing team needs to be doing, right? Here's what your development team needs to be doing. And then they're off doing what they need to do. And then you have these quick, like 15-minute check-ins with all of them. And so how are we on line item ABC or XYZ, right? And okay, are we good? Are we on track? Move on to the next one, right? And so this is a way for the team to feel that they can always come to me, and we have these check-ins, but that I'm not overbearing them, right? I'm not saying, hey, Andrew, what are you doing over there? You know, like I'm not hovering on your back, because nobody wants that. No one wants to feel like they're controlled or they have no say. And just because I have the director title, right? It essentially doesn't mean anything except, okay, I have to make sure that this product or this service gets released on this certain time, and I have this whole stakeholder management. I have to make sure that if we say, okay, we'll give you, we're going to release XYZ on this date, my stakeholders are expecting that, right? And so I manage that relationship, right? And then I also have a team that I have to make sure is empowered and is working like a well-oiled machine, right? So that's all my title affords me, right? Like, I mean, to be honest, it's like it's a lot of just like coordinating work and making sure expectations are set, right? But I really don't have the power to come down and say, hey, this is like completely off base, or like your idea is so shitty. Like I would never do that.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense.
But I do give candid feedback to my team. But then we have the expectations of, we talk it out, right? So if somebody feels that this is the direction or strategy we should be going with, I am an open mind, open idea policy, but you got to defend it, right?
Yeah.
So if you just say, oh, because I feel this way, or just because I think, that's not good enough on my team. Right? Like, yeah.
And I'm curious too, in like, do you have brainstorming sessions with your team?
Yes, all the time.
And so
we have the design sessions, design reviews. Yep.
I'm curious to hear, because I've had experiences where I go into a brainstorming session, whether I'm the leader or there's somebody else leading it, and we seem to be running in circles. And there's this technique that they actually use in improv called yes and Samir and I talk about this sometimes. But do you ever employ that when you're having brainstorming sessions where you build off of each other? What's the best way to just to build off of others' ideas in a brainstorming session?
So the way we do it, the first thing is, no ideas should be thrown away.
Okay.
Right. So like we basically have a wall, and we have stickies. Right. Well, right now it's virtual, right? We're using something called the Kanban method.
Okay.
I would Google that if you guys are interested, but it's a really good way to get some ideas and brainstorm. But everyone writes down their ideas. They get stuck to the wall. On the other side is the objective or the goals or where you want to be.
Okay.
Right. And so that's your, like, okay, we have an objective. If you don't have an objective, I would say start from there. Yeah. What are we? Okay, we're having a brainstorming session, but why? Question that. Why are we getting together? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to build something? Are we trying to improve something? Are we trying to create something that's brand new? Like, what is the objective? If you don't have a good enough objective, I'm like, don't set up a meeting.
Right.
If you don't have a good enough objective to meet, don't, like, why we're wasting our time. We should be doing work, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So once you guys have those objectives and those goals and those, like, this is what we want to do, in the beginning, let all of the ideas fly.
Sure.
Right? And then you start sort of getting down to the nuts and the bolts and sort of the weeds of, okay, let's start categorizing these ideas. Okay, is this idea trying to improve or helping us get to here? Right? No, not really. Okay, but this idea is. So you start moving them towards those objectives and those goals.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
It's interesting too, because this is a lot of what you're saying now was shared with our interview with Mr. Smith, but you're also a young guy. And so it's cool to hear, you share the same leadership style as him. But I'm curious, do you have a mentor when you were coming through the ranks? Again, you're still young now and you're certainly mentoring other people. But did you have like a specific mentor?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it was someone specific. I was very lucky to be around people who were super smart, like technically, but also very creative. Like, you know, because I told you, like I've been in music and bands my whole life.
Right.
Like that's the other thing, right? I know, Samir, you had mentioned you were into theater.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
being in theater will beat a Toastmasters any day. People are like, oh, you should do Toastmasters so you can communicate and talk to people. Okay, there's a whole difference of like being on stage and commanding your audience and having that stage presence that a Toastmasters will probably never provide for you, right? And so when you're in bands, right, you like there's this whole like DIY or do it yourself notion of like, hey, we aren't gonna get a record label giving us all this money. We're gonna have to do our own marketing. We're gonna have to figure out how to record our own stuff. We're gonna figure out how to book our own shows, right?
Right.
And so I've met these people who I've looked up to who are in different sort of capacities of doing these things.
Sure.
But you know, in my work life, it wasn't always the the director or the executive, and sometimes it was, but sometimes it was also my colleague who are like, hey, this guy is really smart, or this
Right.
girl is really smart, and I want to know and I want to learn the knowledge that they have.
Right.
Sometimes when you start diving into, you know, internships or the work environment, you'll start to see even your colleagues who are smart. And it doesn't what's great about that, it doesn't have to be this, they're a mentor and I'm just a mentee,
Sure.
right? Like, hey, let's go to lunch, let's talk about life, let's like connect on different things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have that mentor who was maybe a senior, but I also valued the relationships that were around me, that they were, you know, maybe we were on the same um, path, right? But I also had people who were younger than me, and I liked guiding them as well, or
Right.
just talking about learning, and learning about, you know, like, oh, if there's a certain situation or a question they had, like, you know, I always enjoyed like just giving back because,
Right.
right, like at the end of the day, like no amount of status or money or fame or whatever is going to help make you feel better, or give you some sort of pride as much as like, hey, I can give back and I can
Sure.
teach somebody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. I bet that is very rewarding for you.
Yes, it's very rewarding.
Definitely. I mean, I think that's something that Andrew and I we definitely talk about, and it's for sure like a cornerstone of what Transcend Reality is about. That I mean, yeah, you know, maybe we have a little bit of that agenda of creating quality content, but the whole point isn't just to get a big audience and then gloat about that. It's to get that big audience so that more people feel empowered to reach their dreams and their aspirations. So I mean,
And you know what I would say? Seek those people out. And there's so many ways. So at Columbia, I'll give you the latest example. We started something called the Emerging Technologies Consortium, right?
Right.
And I had made a list of thought leaders that I wanted to invite, and it was simple. Like it was like social media stalking them, right? It was like going on their LinkedIn, like going on Twitter, tweeting at them, like trying to make connections, to people that worked with them. Like I spent a lot of time trying to form these like contacts, but you have to just be relentless.
Yeah.
Right. You have to go down this rabbit hole of like, hey, we want to get, let's say, person X. Okay, what's his circle, right? Like, what does that look like? How can we sort of penetrate that, and how can we start a conversation at least?
Sure.
Yeah.
And so seek those people out. You like, people always think like this door is gonna knock and this perfect person is gonna walk.
Yoda's gonna walk through the door.
Yeah. And be like, I will mentor you. Like,
Yeah.
No, it's valuable advice in terms of seeking that person out.
Yep. And I would say, like, you know, are you guys seniors, juniors?
Yeah.
Seniors, yeah.
Right. Try to get an internship for the summer. And the reason why I say that is like you will start to understand what it's like to be part of an organization, a
Right.
team.
Right.
You'll start to see how people work, right? You'll start to see like what is valued at a unit, at a corporation, at an organization.
Sure.
Even if it's 2 days a week or something. Even if it's not doing what you want to do,
Yeah.
at least you get a sense of what it's like to work with a team that are completely different than what you are, and what it's like to contribute to something.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure.
Well, that certainly set you up well too early on when you were working as a junior coder.
Yeah.
At the
Yep.
video game company.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, I definitely believe that you have a lot of valuable experience with your leadership experience, what you do there. But before we get to that, you made a really, really good point of, when you have meetings, when you have work, start with the why. And
Yes.
that's a cornerstone of what Andrew and I would talk about. So I want to ask you that, do you have a personal why, like a life mission? You could put it that way.
I can tell you it changes a lot.
Yeah.
It changes at different stages of my life, right? And so when I was younger, my whys were I was also into like skateboarding as well, right? I wanted to do this trick. Like this is when I was like 12, 13, or I wanted to learn this instrument, right?
Yeah.
Or I wanted to write this. I was into writing little video games as well, right? Like, so like if you look at your life, all of those like whys and missions are gonna change. When I got married, it was I want to spend my time with my wife. I want to go and travel with her, right?
Yeah.
I want to learn together. I want to do things together that I haven't done before, right? So like my sort of compass changes, right? My sort of the objectives or the goals change, right? So where I'm at now, my whys and my missions are different. Now I have 2 kids. Now I have this like time value function running in my head. How do I spend the most amount of time with my kid while still making the amount of money, while still feeling good about myself, while still being mentally sane, right? Like
Right.
now I have all these different sort of goals and objectives that I run through my head, and I have a lot more people I think about as well. So which is always, once again, it's a good thing, right? Change is good, and you want to make sure as you're going through life, you aren't so tunnel vision and you don't see the big picture, right? So it's always good to sort of take a step back, reassess, why am I doing this? And the great thing we do on my team at Columbia is we write one pagers. So if you guys know what this is, right? Let's say you have a new idea. Let's say you want to start up a new business. Write up a one pager. And it can be simple as, what are we trying to do? Who is doing it? What are the challenges? Right? How can we get there? It has to be a one pager. Don't go crazy.
Yeah.
And then write that one pager, and then find if you can do it yourself, great. But if you can find people who are like excited about what you're doing, and you can communicate that, and you guys are on the same wavelength, that's even better as well.
I love that idea because
Definitely.
it's also a wonderful way to stay grounded. Because you
Yes.
mentioned there are days where it's like, maybe I don't necessarily want to. You feel like you're going. You have to go in. And you said you have less of those, and you said most days you wake up and you're excited about what you do. But on those off days, you can look at that paper and remind yourself really what it is you're doing. So I think
Yes.
it's a very valuable,
Yes.
tangible thing that you have as
Yep.
well. So I love that
And
idea.
it's also you don't kill ideas, right? Because let's say if somebody comes to me and we all have inherent biases, right? I'm like, oh
Sure.
God, this idea is horrible. But I never say, yeah, we're not doing that.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, let's write up a one pager, and we have
How
a
can we make it
standard
work?
template, right? And they go back, they get their ideas down, and then and upon reading that one page, I'm like, wow, they really thought about this idea.
Yeah.
They really formulated it out. And even at the time where maybe they haven't thought about it, and I say, go write your one pager,
Yeah.
it makes them think. And I've had times where like, you know what? Yeah, this Parixit, this one pager, I was writing this, and this idea doesn't, really get us to our goal or provide any value or substance. And then they themselves are like, yeah, we shouldn't go down this route. I've had the opposite, whereas like my first initial feeling was like, yeah, this is a bad idea,
Yeah.
like this idea sucks. But I was like, wow, like this person has given it enough thought, and it's something that I didn't think about, and they've formulated a way of how we could execute it or what we need to do. And I've actually changed my mind about it, right? And like, that's a good thing. So could you imagine being a leader where you're like, no, we're not doing it. You follow on those first instincts of like, I'm not doing it, right? It's you completely killed a potential idea that could have been good.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Very valuable.
So, like on that same notion of finding those sorts of ideas, you mentioned how when you're acting as a leader for your team, you like to inspire a little bit of autonomy amongst the people you work with. And that reminds me of Netflix in a way. So how do you make sure to balance that sort of independence, and also that people just don't like dive off the rails and end up not being productive?
Yeah. So we have this 80-20 rule, right? So and it's actually not we, like Google does this, like, right, and you probably heard of it as well.
Yeah.
80% of your time should be on the core objectives, right? Goals that we have laid out for our team. The 20% of the time, feel free to do something completely different.
Right.
Right. And I feel like there should be a way that you're accountable and trackable. Right. So if your 20% of your 20% is growing and you're forgetting about your core objectives and your core responsibilities, that's not good. And that's when you and I are going to have a conversation about that. Right.
Yeah.
But so I really feel that, 20% of your time, let yourself get out of this comfort zone and the zone of I am, let's say, a senior developer, or I am an accountant or whatever. Like, let yourself out of and see this different world that maybe you don't get a chance to explore.
Right.
But we also have to be productive, and we also have to produce, because look, I report to somebody, they report to somebody, that person reports to somebody, right? And if we're not producing, and if we're not being efficient, and if we're letting our customers down, or we are sort of getting loosey goosey, then the whole team is going to get hurt, right?
Right.
The product's going to fail, the service is going to fail, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah, and you mentioned Google, and you also say your goal as a leader is to empower the people around you to work in an autonomous way and give them that freedom. I think Google, they have like a day, I think a year, where they send people home and they have to come back with new ideas. And out of that, some stuff like Gmail was invented.
Yep. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
Transformative platforms from Google that come from those days where they just sent workers home. They're like, think of something new and bring it to me tomorrow. That's your only task for today.
Yeah, it's funny. We had I visited Google offices in New York City, and one of their sort of like what they tell employees, or what to strive for, is think of this notion of 10x, right? So let's say you are using email, right? Don't just think how we can make email a little better. Think how we can make email 10x better, right?
Right.
How can we completely change what email is, right? And make it 10 times better than what it is today, right? So that. Oh, the other important thing is the culture, right? Culture is like soaked in that stuff, right? So if you form a culture where your employees are bringing their best ideas, and they feel like it's not a totalitarian regime that they're part of, but also like there's accountability and there's tracking baked in, like that culture is amazing to have.
Right.
And leaders should think about how to cultivate that culture. There's this really famous or popular saying, right? Culture, culture eats strategy. You could have the best plans, right? And you may think like you can execute. If you don't have a culture that supports and is thriving, and your employees are feeling like, hey, like I want to be part of this, and they make it like their passionate mission, your strategy is going to go to shit.
Yeah.
Right? And I've seen it happen so many places.
Right.
Culture is everything, and you want to make sure you, and as a leader, that's one of the main roles you have, is building a culture that is empowering your team.
Right.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Wow. You know, I was just about to ask a question, but I forgot it. But you know, that your whole, you know, little discussion on leadership and there we go, creating ideas.
Yes.
You know, you talk about how a leader should work to cultivate ideas, and it doesn't matter if it's, you know, kind of garbage at the beginning or if it's brilliant at the beginning. It can become something and evolve something.
Yes.
So, you know, for the audience out there, and you know, even for us, you know, there are days when we approach our work or life and we feel motivated to do something and we just get results. But there are equally days when, you know, we talk about this, Andrew mentioned it, when we're feeling a little bit down and it's tough to think of things. So how do you go about generating ideas and coming up with new thoughts?
So, I mean, this is kind of cliched, but like you probably heard this, right? Like some of my best ideas are in the shower. Right? Like honestly, like some of my best damn ideas are like I'm in the shower and I'm thinking, like I'm not, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm in this like nice warm place, or I don't know, but like some of my best ideas I've come from like just taking a shower. So like and maybe it's like I'm away from my usual office setting, or you know, now we're all home, but you know, even office at my home. But and my mind just wanders. Oh, like I was always a daydreamer, right? Like do that, right? Like daydream. Like sometimes let yourself go somewhere else, and it allows your mind to take you out of that crummy situation, think about something else, and not always feel like, oh man, I have to sort of grind this out, right? Because you know what's going to happen, and it happened to me, you're going to get burnt out. And burnout is a real thing, right? Like if you keep on thinking, I'm going to work through this, I'm just going to power through this, I'm just going to, no matter what, you're going to get burnt out. And then your passion for that, like whatever you were trying to do, is going to dwindle, right? Your just ability to even think logically is not going to be there, because your brain and your being doesn't want to do what you're doing.
Right.
For sure.
So it's just something to keep thinking about as well.
Yeah, I mean, no shame, by the way, in showers. I mean, we literally bought like a little whiteboard for me, because I'm just standing there. I'm like, oh, hey, that might be a good business in like 50 years. So I just jot it down. So, I mean, you know, I even carry around with me, I have it right here in my drawer, a literal little book, and I call it my idea book. Because, I mean, I can be taking a walk and I just see something. I'm like, oh, hey, that's something to consider. And
that's why I think like
the power of ideas.
Yes, and that's why I think that one pager idea that, you know, I'm employing is super important, because it's quick, right? You don't have to go down this rabbit hole where you get stuck, right? It's enough. It's not just one line or two lines of an idea, but it's enough substance you need to think about to fill that one page, right? Because you don't want to be like, oh, here's a great idea, and that's it. You still have to put some thought into it, right? But not enough for like, oh, you're not getting into the nitty-gritty details where you start double and triple checking of like, if this is even a great idea, right? Before you even get started. So that's why I like this one pager concept where like, okay, let's do a one pager. Give me a one pager on why you think we should be doing this. Right. And so like we literally have the way I've organized like our team structure, like we have a folder, one pagers, and they're all categorized and out into like different teams that are part of my larger team. And I love even just going in there sometimes when I'm out of ideas, right? I mean, now it's like I have the luxury of having other people create ideas. And that's the other thing. You want to have your team not just be to the grind and following a process, because they're not going to give you any ideas if they're just not in that culture, right? So I can go through these folders and read these other one pagers, and something clicks in my head. So that's why this all connects.
No, you certainly want to be inspired by the company you keep.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Really good point. Really good point. So, Mr. Davé, there's a question that Andrew and I love considering out for ourselves, and also asking the people that who we come across, which is, thinking 30 years down the line, 40 years down the line, and when you're looking back on your life, what would you consider to be a life well lived in your eyes?
A life well lived in my eyes is whenever I learn something, am I applying it, right? Am I helping someone else with it? Am I leaving? And like, this is really cliche too, but yeah, like I think about this. Am I leaving a better planet, a better legacy for
absolutely
society, for my kids? Like, and once again, like, now I start to think about these things more as I'm getting older, because now I have a family, right? And so, I want to think about, am I putting effort into something that gets me excited to wake up and have more good days than bad days? Am I making decisions that are going to have a positive impact on my team, on the people that are going to be using the products and services that we're creating? Right? Am I learning every day? Right? I want to make sure like I'm not stuck in this bubble where the next 5 to 10 years I'm irrelevant. Right? And then I'm phased out. Right? Like what? And I always think about that. Like, what is my value on my team, or where I'm working? Like, what's the value that I bring to it? And if and I can't be complacent. Like, most people get as they age and they get older, they get comfy, and they have a way of thinking or a way of thought that they think is the best, and like the world changes, right? Like, one thing that's constant is change. And so I always want to have this mindset, and it's more of like a learner's or growth mindset, that I'm always learning something, keeping myself not get complacent.
It's awesome. And that certainly goes back to your whole point about leaving an impact and helping others. Goes back to the advice you gave us just a couple of days ago on generating wealth and differentiating really the difference between that and just becoming really rich for yourself. And so
that's true wealth in my eyes.
Right. So thank you so much for coming back and joining us so shortly after. We know you're really busy.
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked a lot. We got some really awesome stuff extracted out for all of our benefit.
Yes, this was.
Yeah, I hope you folks, in your personal, professional lives, hopefully could apply some of this stuff. It's really helped me out as well.
Well, we really appreciate this, and we're sure all those who are fortunate enough to listen to it will as well. So thank you so much again.
No worries. All right, thank you, and
have a great one.
You too. Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye. Stay healthy.
Yep.
Oh man, that was awesome. That was seriously great stuff again.
Yeah, I know, dude. I'm excited every time just by talking to him. He's so smart too, and he's able to simplify what it is he does and explain that to to us, which is something I really appreciated. You know, I mean, somebody who emerging technology is not a simple thing; it's very complex,
Yeah.
and he is able to bring it down to our level and have a conversation with us. And I really appreciated just his authenticity and him being so genuine and kind. One for
Exactly.
joining us and sharing, what was it, like I think 2 hours and 30 minutes of his time with us
At least.
and just all great stuff. We weren't running in circles at any point in there. He was just
Yeah.
continuously giving us great new advice, and I certainly will take that with me. I was just writing stuff down here, this the 80-20 rule, all these different rules that you can apply, the one pager as a leader.
Yeah.
He talked about developing culture, and so as somebody who aspires to be a leader of whoever it is that I found myself working with, I really appreciated his advice, and I can't thank him enough for that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, Mr. Davé, he gave so much from leadership to his personal life, talking about, his work with cultivating good family life, cultivating a good lifestyle, how he finds meaning in the world. So this was definitely all about meaningful ideas.
Yeah, I loved it. And just the idea of like even the brainstorming session part of the podcast, where we talked about like, you're working in emerging technology, that's moving really fast, so they're constantly brainstorming. How do you pull, together as a group and really generate impactful ideas, right? You talked about the 10x rule, like you even mentioned it with Elon too. Like, he's not creating solutions for just today. He's thinking so far down the road and completely re-engineering, how to look at certain things. And I think certain people have a gift, but it's also something that can be learned. And so I really enjoyed listening to him, as it helped me to start to think like that and to find ways to start to think like that.
Definitely, man. So you know what? How about this? We're young guys, but we still have good ideas, because as he was saying, 500 years ago, the only way you could ever learn was to find somebody who was like a scientist or somebody who did research, and then you could learn. But today, you don't need to hunt down professors or anything. Pull out your phone, pull out your computer, and boom, we have some. Before we go on to the next point, there was a crazy fact that the computers used in Apollo 11.
The calculator fact?
I know. What's that?
Well, wasn't it that there's like more technology in our calculator today than there was like on, I don't know. This is probably incorrect, so little disclaimer, I'm not sure. But like your TI-84 that you use in math class, apparently that has like more technology in it than potentially one of the first rockets. Again, I don't know. It sounds so maybe it's not right. Don't quote me on it, but you could look it up.
Yeah, exactly. So what I was about to get at was something a little different.
Sorry, Samir.
No, it's all good, man.
It's notorious for cutting you off.
It's okay. It adds for a little laugh. So the iPhones that you and I carry are advanced, obviously, and then we look at one of those Saturn V rockets from the Apollo program. There was science that proved that iPhones from like the early 2010s were astronomically more powerful than what was used to go to the moon.
Yeah, so that's what it was. It was iPhones, not calculators. But
that's okay, man.
Advanced calculators, so I would like to think I wasn't too far off.
I'm sure Elon Musk can make something like that.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I don't know how we even got to this little tangent, but what I was going to say is that we have good ideas because the world is literally accessible through phones and computers for us and for everybody. So how about we take this like some time to talk about what our thoughts on everything that Mr. Davé mentioned, and then we can do a recap on some of the ideas that touched us the most from him.
Yeah, like I said, Samir, I really liked some of the experience that he was able to give us about leadership,
Yeah.
and how to implement that in developing cultures. I appreciated some of the stuff that he was giving us, and he was pulling that from, it's not just something that he uses at Columbia. I mean, it's stuff that they use at Google and Tesla, and you know, what it means to think divergently, as Mr. Ide says, right? Think outside of the box.
Our English teacher, by the way.
Yes.
Phenomenal man.
Yes, he is. But to really think in a different way that inspires actual change, right?
Yeah.
And not just, you know, get through day to day. And I also liked one thing, this is a little bit different, but when you asked him about, like, you know, what's your why? And he said it changes. And Mr. Smith said the same thing. You know, it's changing. And so, you know, I think that some people, you know, until recently, I thought that you were supposed to have one why, I guess you would say.
And
that's it. And then, you know, that's your whole life. And I think listening to them talk about how their whys are constantly changing. I mean, Mr. Davé talked about when he was 12, it was about doing the next cool skateboarding trick. And then, you know, he became a junior coder when he was 18. And, you know, it's continuing.
Video games, yeah.
He got married, he has kids, and how all of that is still changing. And it doesn't have to be so definite. I mean, you know, he said, you know, change is a good thing. And I think it's important to look at it that way and not fret, you know, change, but to welcome it and to evolve with that. That's what I took away. Yeah.
Beautiful points. And I'll build right off that, you know, Andrew, of what you were just mentioning, what Mr. Davé had said about how change is like the ultimate constant from the moment we're born all the way to the end. And, you know, that's in fact actually a Stoic idea. And of course, it's not just Stoic, but all the world religions have it. All the world big thoughts have it. But something that is commonly touted is how it's a Stoic idea, and how they believed that no matter what happens, change will exist, whether it is a job or whether it's our physical growth from kids to adults. So, I mean, yeah, you know, Andrew, there's this a Stoic idea called amor fati, which literally means to love your fate. And of course, you know, that isn't referring to anything ridiculous.
Sure.
You know, the atrocities in life or anything.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, let's take a math test at school or something like that. That, you know, we walk in the classroom, it's test day, and we're looking at it, we're like, oh, I'm gonna kill it.
Yeah.
This is my day. This is our day to win. And we come back, you know, a week, 2 weeks later, and we get our test back, and we see like a C+.
Oh no.
and just as you said, you know, we thought we were gonna kill it. It killed us.
It's killing me, man. Some of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No. So, you know, I feel like there's like a branch in terms of how we can respond to things.
Sure.
That either we can respond in our baser human way, or we can respond in a way that we actively employ these sorts of ways of life, like Stoicism, philosophy, world religions. And we respond in a way that, yeah, look, I messed up.
Right.
I don't know how yet, but I do believe I can talk to people, I can reflect introspectively and learn where I messed up. I can accept that fact, I can adapt for the next time. And hopefully, if I do things well, if you do things well, we can do better. We won't get that D+ next time.
Yeah, man. No, that's a great point.
Thank you, man. So, I mean, that's pretty much like what amor fati is. And then we can again take another example that, like, let's say it's the weekend, and in a non-COVID world, you know, we have family home, and, you know, we're all having fun, and, you know, we have these like big plans of going out. And right as we're getting our shoes on, we're getting ready to rumble, it starts pouring. So, of course, you know, I mean, there go all of our plans to go to the park or watch a movie or whatever. But it doesn't have to be the fact that we all, you know, get by a fireplace and like we're grumbling to each other how our day is messed up. You know, we can, again, accept that fact, adapt, and almost try to create a better day than if we had gone to watch that movie or go to a park. So, in a way, that's what amor fati is, to cherish what happens because it can allow for more opportunities.
Yeah, and he talked about that in our first episode with Mr. Davé did with him, about learning how to pivot, and really seizing opportunity, and transforming what seemed like a really unfortunate occurrence into a gift.
Yep.
And that's certainly been the theme with him and Mr. Smith and their success. So it's something, and it's not hard to employ in our lives.
Exactly.
It's just about reframing. So
exactly, man. So might as well move forward with the smile.
We were going into the outro.
Yeah.
Froze, got the good thumbnail. Now, okay. So go ahead.
We're good.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, like, it was just so funny that I think we both froze for each other.
Okay.
So I was talking, and then I just see you like smiling. You're looking at me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know, man, if you're being the Kung Fu Panda right now, or if you're
no.
Frozen.
You were frozen up on me too. So
yeah.
Anyway, it was
all
a great
good,
second episode. Transcend Reality podcast.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun, Samir.
This was seriously awesome. We got some awesome stuff, man. I'm looking forward to our next episode. Skadoosh. Let's do it.